Hey guys, you're watching the Best Practices Show, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all across the country. And one of the people right next to you is one of the most important elements of your entire dental practice. It's your chairside dental assistant. Today, we're going to be talking to my good friend who's an expert on how we boost the assistant and raise your bottom line. So you don't want to miss this. This is a game changer. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. We'll see you in a second. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show. Thank you again for watching. We are having so much fun doing these. And again, keep the requests coming as far as the things that you want to see, because we're going to do our best to make sure we get you that information. Now, a couple show notes before we jump into this amazing topic is this. We are shooting this live on Facebook. So if you're watching this during the feed, please ask your questions, and I'll ask Kevin directly, and we'll get you those answers, because I want to make sure you get the most out of this and put it into play right away in your practice. And then secondly, if you're watching this later on, continue to add your questions, and again, we'll make sure that we're getting back to you on a regular basis. Now, this is such an important topic. I love this topic that we're going to be talking about today, because having a great dental practice requires that you have a great team. And while we talk about elements of the practice, one of the positions that gets skipped over a lot is the chairside dental assistant, who's a huge piece of making sure all of this works. So I got my good friend on, Kevin Henry, today, who's an expert. And we're going to talk a lot about the details and really the elements of how you boost this person or this group of people and really raise the bottom line in your practice. Now, Kevin, I know your story. You've been hugely involved in organized dentistry for a long time, and really on the CE side of things, you were involved with dental economics, where you're the managing editor, and then dental practice report, and now you've got Ignite Dental Assistant. I want you to tell people, if they don't know who you are, because I get to see you at all the meetings, but tell them who you are, and I would love to know a little bit more about your story and how you got into this role.
Yeah, Kirk, thanks so much, first of all, for having me on. I appreciate it. And it's always good to see you even across the miles here. I came into dentistry in 1999. I was in sports public relations. I knew nothing about dentistry, except I needed to go every 6 months to get my teeth looked at and checked out. And all of a sudden, the dream job that I had with the NAIA, Small College Athletics, I was their director of public relations. They moved from Tulsa to Kansas City. And I had a 1-month-old child at the time, and it was one of those, I dared not move her away from her grandparents. So I took a job as the managing editor for dental economics. I knew very little about dental, so I started shadowing some practices in the Tulsa area, just kind of to get a feel for what went on behind the scenes that maybe patients don't always see. And I learned real quickly that the assistants were such a big part of the success of the practice. I mean, they made it run. If the assistant calls in sick, it's a bad day in the practice. Right. So while I was at Dental Economics, we started Dental Assisting Digest, because I felt like somebody needed to be talking to the assistants out there from the publication side of things. And that was a great run. And while I was there, I started speaking at meetings across the country to assistants, because there's very few of us out there who kind of focus on that. And then when I moved over to Dental Products Report, we started Modern Dental Assistant, because, again, I feel like that needs to be a voice that's out there. Everybody's talking to the dentist and hygienist, who's talking to the assistant. So it's been a great run. Now I'm doing Ignite DA, which is focused on education and empowering dental assistants. Life's good. I love what I do. I love talking to assistants around the country. And I love talking to you today. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And this is such a, I'm so passionate about this particular topic. And really, you and Shannon Pace are the only two that I know of that are out there talking on a regular basis about this important role. And I'm crazy grateful to have you on. Now, talk about why this is so important. Like, why is this subject so important, and why does it get skipped over?
Well, in my opinion, it's like you said at the very start of the show. If you're going to have a successful business, and every dental practice should be viewed as a business, not just a dental practice, every employee in that business needs to be optimized to his or her full potential. And so many times people are looking at, well, what's the hygiene department doing? And they're looking at other aspects, but they're not seeing everything that the dental assistant can do in the practice to help that bottom line grow. And they're also not taking advantage of all the things that the dental assistant can do in each state. And we'll talk about that in a minute, I'm sure. But each state is different. Each state has its own laws on what assistants can or can't do. And so many times I'll go into a practice or I'll talk to dentists or team members, and they're saying, oh gosh, I didn't know we could do that. Or, yeah, we can do that. We just haven't made the transition yet. And it's like, why are you missing this important part of your business? And I firmly believe, team members who are empowered, team members who feel like they're a part of the bottom line of the business, then absolutely they're going to perform much better. They're going to enjoy their career more. They're going to enjoy where they work more. And really, that's my ultimate goal with Ignite DA and the speaking that I do. It's empowering those assistants to feel like they matter because they do matter.
Right. And let's just go right there too, because I'll give my opinion and I want you to agree or disagree. But dentists are trained and they're passionate, especially if you're watching this, you're passionate about the way you want it, the way you see it. And so they become a little bit control freaks or a lot of control freaks. And so they're not willing to give up that control. Right. And what it does is it forces them to overfunction, and a lot of people around them underfunction, which means they don't develop the skills. And, it's true. You hear this stuff all the time. Dental assistants end up in a pattern of being spit suckers. And I hate that term.
I do too, but I've heard it so often. Absolutely.
I hate it. And really, if you really want to boil it down, anyone that's ever labeled themselves that or been in an environment that was labeled that, you just see an environment where they're not really empowered and they're not brought up to the level where they can perform. Would you agree that this is really where all the problem starts?
Absolutely, I would. And a lot of times, you're right. I mean, I've heard all the things. We did a survey once on what's the nicest thing a dentist ever said to you and what's the meanest thing a dentist ever said to you. And the second answer is a whole other show, trust me. But, overwhelmingly, the nicest thing was thank you. And these men and women are just craving that appreciation for the job that they do. Right. And so many times, I've heard the spit sucker. I've heard you're just an assistant. You're a dime a dozen. I've heard all those things. And I hate to tell you, it's not the case, because a well-trained, empowered assistant who loves what he or she does is such a valuable part of the practice. But it often can start with the dentist. It often can start with that view of this other team member. And that's one of the things that I'm out there trying to change as much as I can.
That's awesome. And I always ask dentists this. This applies to almost every role in the practice, but how fast can the right dental assistant change your life? And every dentist will say, well, about 60 seconds. My life is completely transformed. So the truth of this. Now, sure. I do want to go into the legal boundaries, because it's funny. And you and I were talking about this. I'm still a little unclear in some respects, and you'd think everyone would know for the most part, but really, when I talk all over the place, it's very, very vague. So can you give us the legal boundaries of what an assistant can't do or can't do?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said earlier, every state is different. I've got a good friend, Tia Hunter, who's a rock star assistant in the St. Louis area. She used to live in Illinois and would work in Missouri. And just the difference of crossing the river there, it's a huge difference between what assistants can do in Illinois and Missouri. Every state is different. So there's a real easy way to find this out. And I always encourage dental assistants to go to this website. It's D as in dental, A as in assisting, N as in national, B as in board.org. danby.org. The Dental Assisting National Board has done a great job of putting all this information in one place. You can click on their site and it says state requirements. Click on there. A map of the United States will come up. You can click on Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, wherever you are. Click on that, and it'll immediately pop up exactly not only what assistants can and can't do in that state, but also the different titles that they can earn through continuing education, through their learning. It's a great thing for assistants to go and see what they can do, because so many assistants are on the job trained.
Right.
excuse me, and so many times they are doing what the dentist tells them they can do. And I always tell assistants, you've got to look out for yourself. And this is something that's a great way for you to check, okay, am I really allowed to do this or not? And, I can talk, you and I talked before we went on the air about that example. Do you want to talk about Tulsa?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So, great.
So, as I mentioned, I started out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where I'm born and raised. And there was a oral surgery practice in Tulsa about 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm sure you all might remember it, that was in the national news. I mean, it was the lead story on the NBC Nightly News while I was working out one night. And it was a dentist who was breaking every kind of infection control procedure that you could possibly have. But one of the worst things that was going on in there is that he was doing sleep dentistry, and the assistants were actually administering the IV to start that sleep dentistry procedure. And so when it came out in the media that the assistants were doing that, that was one thing that the public hopped on immediately, like, oh my gosh, how can these people be doing that? And their only excuse was, well, the dentist said it was okay. And so they ended up being vilified as much in the media and in the public for a period of time as much as the dentist was, because in the public's eyes, they were doing something wrong just as much as the dentist was. And that's why I always tell assistants, that can happen to you. Don't think it can't. So take those steps necessary, look at what you can or can't do. And again, it's not all negative. I also spin it that your assistant may be allowed to do things in your state that you don't even know about. And again, if you're looking at it as a business, why not let every employee do things to their full potential? Because if it's a business, the highest paid employee in that business is the dentist. The dentist should be doing the things that earn the most money for the business. So let the assistant do the things that he or she can do, and let the dentist move on to other things in the practice.
Yeah. And let's go into a couple of those things, because if you're a dentist watching this, you know how this works. I mean, I am a big fan of getting the camera out of the dentist's hands. You fire the dentist as fast as possible and have a lot of times you have to struggle for the camera too. You literally pull it out of the dentist. They're like, no. And I'm like, sure. And give it to the assistant and say, don't ever give it back. And now you've just freed up a month of their life every year, But anesthesia too, can you talk about that? Are there 45 states or more than 45? I think there's more than 45 states that allow others to administer. Is that right?
I think that's right. I mean, certainly go to that Danby site to double check and make sure, because again, there's even little details about, does the dentist have to be in the room? Does the dentist have to be in the practice? Right. And it's not just for things like that. It's digital impressions, with everything coming on now. 3D printing, how does that affect dentistry? How does that affect the dental assistant? There's so many things that are changing now with technology that's really important. Every practice, every business knows exactly what the assistant can or can't do.
Right. And it's really important to make sure that they go right up. I like it when they go right up to the line, at least challenging themselves. And I was going to ask you about the digital workflow, because that's such a hot topic right now. And don't get mad at me if you're watching this and I say this, but there are a lot of assistants, they call themselves Sarah Queens or whatever system they subscribe to. They love it so much, and they'll go through the training that they'll limit the doctor from getting involved. They're like, get out of here until I need you.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about the digital workflow and how that's changed assisting?
Oh, absolutely. And it's really, in my opinion, it's not only empowered assistants, but it's also opened up a whole new opportunity. There was a long time in there where dental assisting was seen as almost a stepping stone into hygiene. And it was just, I'm doing this until I can get into hygiene school. And I think that the digital workflow has opened up some opportunities now where dental assistants can say, you know what, I can do the scanning. I can do this whole digital workflow and really run things. I mean, certainly the dentist plays a role, but if the assistant can run this and run the digital workflow, not only think about how it can boost the bottom line of the practice, having the assistant run this, again, depending on state laws, but also frees up the dentist to do so many other things. You talked about a month of their life with the digital camera. Oh my gosh, you throw in CAD cam, you throw in everything else, that frees up months of their life, if the assistant can actually do it. And, and I know so many practices around the country where you're right, the assistants are taking great pride in being those, overlords of the digital workflow, or the Sarah Queens, or whatever it might be. They love what they do. And if you walk into a practice where the assistant really loves what she does or he does, you can feel it.
Yeah, you can. And the patients see that too. So that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're an assistant watching this, where would you start? What would be some of the advice that you would give the assistant? And what would be some of the advice you'd give a dentist and say that who might be a control freak?
Well, first of all, let's go to the dentist.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer that, the control freaks are out there. I know that. And I also understand that you feel like that this is your business. But you have to understand that your team is also paying their car bills, their home mortgages, everything else by being a part of that business as well. Yeah. And so I always encourage dentists, share your numbers with your entire team. Our good friend Linda Miles, Kirk, she and I were talking not long ago, and she said, it's like a football game. If you are ahead in the fourth quarter, you're going to play a lot differently than if you're behind in the fourth quarter. Right. And assistants need to know that number. How are you doing on monthly goals? Where are the parts of your practice that you're slipping this month or this quarter? And I firmly believe the assistant can look at these numbers, come up with a game plan, come up with a way to actually boost those numbers. I believe that is well within the assistant's role and his or her leadership capacity as well within the practice. So, you may not want to hand over the intraoral camera. You may go, you know what, I don't want to do this. And some dentists have told me they don't want to do it because they feel like that might open the door to talk about a raise or, something like that, God forbid. Yeah. But again, if you look at it from a bottom line of the business, if it boosts your business, why not do it? Why not make that step into this century, this decade? Yeah. And for assistants, I always encourage them, first of all, find your tribe. Find your national, the ADAA, your state dental assisting association. Find folks online, Facebook, Ignite DA, wherever that might be. Find folks where you can talk about your joys, your struggles, your frustrations, because I guarantee you, if you're going through something in your practice right now, there's a practice across town or across the state that has already dealt with it, and they've beat that dragon. Mm-hmm. So find out how they did that. There's a lot of power, I think, in community, and so that's one of the reasons why we started Ignite DA. But I also encourage assistants, take that next step, do continuing education, go to the state meetings, find out from your local sales rep where some lunch and learns might be able to be brought into the practice, some things that you are interested in. Kirk, I'll tell you, one of the things that always blows me away every time I talk to assistants around the country, so many of them love oral surgery. I mean, they love the blood, the guts, the gore, and some things I just go, no way I would do that. Mm-hmm. But they love it. And I always tell them, does your dentist know that? Does your dentist know that you're not just doing this for a paycheck? You really love what you do. And I encourage, open up that line of communication, talk about what you love to do. And then is there a way to do more of that during the day? Is there a way for you to pursue your passion even more? Figure that out, and you'll be amazed how it'll change things.
Yeah, buddy, you're spot on. And I think you're exactly right. Figure out what you love. And then the second thing is find somebody that values that role. Absolutely. Because when you do find somebody that values that role, and then increase your value, because if you're an assistant watching this going, easy for you guys to say, but my dentist doesn't pay a whole lot. Go to your dentist today and say, I'm going to be the best assistant you've ever had. And when I get there, you're going to pay me. Most dentists would say, game on, right?
Exactly.
It's awesome.
And one thing that I do, just an aside from that, I always tell assistants, when's the last time that you had an annual checkup yourself where you and the dentist sat down and said, what am I doing right? What can I improve upon? And then, make some notes. And if they say, you know what, the impressions haven't been that great lately, you're not turning around the room fast enough, then all of a sudden you've got motivation to say, oh yeah, watch this. And really take it upon yourself then to improve in those areas where maybe the dentist thinks that you could get better, and you'll be amazed how things will change.
Right. And I have to ask you this question too on the diagnosis thing. There are some assistants that are afraid to say, well, I can't legally diagnose, so I can't say anything about that. Can we just go there and just talk about, because there's no law that limits an assistant from saying what they think. They just can't legally diagnose, correct?
Well, and what I always tell the assistants are that you are really the champions for the patient. And I believe that firmly. If the dentist walks in and tells the patient that he or she needs a crown, as soon as that dentist walks out of the room, they're going to turn to the assistant and say, what do you think? because they believe, well, the dentist is just in it for the money and this person will tell me the truth. And that's exactly where the role of the assistant comes in with this, that, first of all, you have to believe in the dentistry that your dentist does, and hopefully you do, or that's a whole other conversation. But absolutely, that's where, if you have the education where you can explain to the patient, absolutely, you need this crown and here's why. Absolutely, SRP would be great for you. Here's why. If you can go into that and really become that health professional that every dental assistant should be, you're not only boosting yourself in the eyes of the dentist, but again, you're becoming an even bigger champion for the patient. You can answer a lot of questions, and you can almost, without selling it, sell that case and why it's really important for that dentist or for the patient to take that next step and get that crown.
Yeah, I love how you said that, champion for the patients, because that's so key. And then the other thing that always comes up is when you're deciding who you should work with, what are some of the things as a dentist? Because there are some dentists that are introverts, and having an introverted assistant might be a challenge. Do you see this, that, a good complementing partner is always a great thing? Or if I'm a dentist hiring an assistant, what are some of the things that I'm looking for?
Well, first of all, I think that if you're a dentist looking for an assistant, I would certainly look for somebody. They're not just in this to punch the clock and go home every day. We just did a webinar at Ignite DA last week about telling assistants what they need to do in preparation to be hired. And we told them, do your homework on the practice. Know, some things about that practice going into it. And I would say the same thing about the dentist as well. Ask some questions to see if the assistant has done any homework on your practice. Does she or he know that you do CEREC? What about community outreach? Some things that are very obvious on your website. Test them and see if they've learned anything about your practice before coming in there. Ask them what their passions are in dentistry. Do they love the oral surgery? Do they love working with kids? And if they kind of shrug their shoulders, or if they don't really know, that might be a little bit of a red flag. But when you see those eyes light up and you go, oh yeah, in my previous practice, I've done this, and I've really gotten into this. And I think that that's a huge thing for dentists to be looking out for. What is the reaction whenever you ask a question of the assistant?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important to do the homework, because it says you're a really serious student.
Oh, sure.
And then any other things that you would say as far as, trends that you're seeing in assistants and some of the things that they do that makes the life of the dentist a little bit better?
Absolutely. We talked a little bit earlier about the digital workflow. And, I know that for years, you, me, whenever we see each other at shows, we'll talk about, technology is changing the industry. And people kind of get numb to that because we've talked about it for so long. But I really do think we're at that point now where if you don't have technology in your practice, and if your assistant doesn't know how that technology impacts not only what she does every day, but also how she can impact the patient's life, then that's something you've got to fix sooner than later. It's something that you've got to bring that technology in. You've got to have those lunch and learns. You've got to go to those CE courses and get that assistant trained on what needs to happen. And again, I think it's also up to her to take that next step and to, bring in what he or she is really excited about. So I think technology is a big trend. I do believe that we are also at a tipping point where when that happens, assisting is really going to be raised up a little bit as far as the profession goes, because again, they're going to have that ownership. And I think that that's such a huge thing. It's not just, the things that we always hear. You're not just an assistant. I never want to hear assistants say that. My friend Angela Severance has a great site called ninjadentistry.com, and it stands for No, I'm Not Just an Assistant.
Oh, I love that.
I love Ninja for that. I mean, I every time I see her, she is a rock star with that. I love to talk to her about the Ninja side of things. But if every assistant would really view themselves as not just an assistant, but the dental assistant, the backbone of the practice, the rock star, I think it could change the industry overall. And so that's a trend I'd love to see, is just that self-empowerment, because I think when that happens, the whole dental industry could change.
Absolutely. And I love this path that you're going down, because this is a dilemma for some dentists. Some dentists will say, well, I don't want to pay, assistants really well. So I have quite a few of them to help me turn over the rooms. I'm a big fan of have fewer that are really good at what they do, instead of trying to spread yourself thin and make it more profitable first. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I agree completely. I think every dentist needs to have an assistant that he or she feels comfortable working with, and that's the lead assistant. And again, it's not just that they take great impressions. It's that they've got your back as far as, yes, Mr. Patient, you do need that crown, and here's why. I can explain it to you. I think that there's so much more to a dental assistant than just how quickly you can turn around a room. They've got to be that champion for not only the patient, but also for the dentist, because if you prescribe something, they've got to be able to explain to the patient exactly why that's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, the other thing that I see too, people are starving for more information on the CE side of things. So as a dentist, you might be thinking, well, assistants really don't want this. It's not true. They want a ton of great information. Sometimes it's just hard to find it. Right.
Well, and I'll tell you, and Shannon, if she were on here, she would say this exact same thing. Whenever she and I go to lecture at a meeting, and first of all, I want to say, just as an aside, we're doing the assisting track at Yankee Dental next year. We're doing the assisting track at Chicago Midwinter next year. So shows are starting to see the value of really have something designated for the assistant. Mm-hmm. So many times you walk into a dental meeting and there's something clinical for the dentist and the assistant, but what's really for him or her? And so we're finding that they are starving for the CE. So if Shannon and I are doing something that is specifically for the assistant at a show, we'll have a packed house because they know it's for them, and we're not just scratching out dentist in the script and putting assistant in there. We're really tailoring it for their needs. And you're absolutely right; they're dying for something like that.
Yeah. And you being so involved in dentistry, give me your best guess. And, everybody's trying to predict the future. What do you see in the role of the assistant and the dentist here in the future as things become more digital? I mean, what could you anticipate we see in the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, the great thing about Ignite DA is that we have a sister group with Ignite DDS. Dr. David Rice has really figured out a way to grab those dental students at a young age. And so we're trying to raise up the young dentist and the young assistant together. So they're working together. There's a mutual respect there. And when that happens, I really think things flip as far as the industry goes, because all of a sudden that mutual respect breeds into not only just working with the patient, but as we talked about from day one here, the bottom line of the practice. So I think that that's where things are going to go. I think that this younger generation that's coming in, and not just from the dentist side, but you're talking millennial dental assistants, you're talking millennial dentists who technology has been second nature to them. My daughter's 19, and the days of anything that didn't involve a computer or the internet, that's ancient history. That's Moses with the tablets coming down from on high. So So I think that really this next generation is bringing technology in with them, and I think they're wanting to do things differently than their predecessors. And because of that, I think it opens the door for us to say, well, where does your assistant fit into the mix here? And here's why he or she should have a bigger role. And so we're excited where things are going, and we're really excited because we do think that that's going to flip pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this would apply to anybody in the office. Your real education starts when you start becoming, whether it be a dentist or the assistant. And can I need to ask you about the pre-education that happens for an assistant, because you see everyone trying to run an assisting school. And, I sometimes I kind of worry, because there are some that are done really well. And then there's others I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? So can you just speak to that?
Yeah, and I can, and I will preface this by saying that any kind of education for assistants I appreciate, but I also know a lot of the dental assisting schools that are popping up within dental practices now. The dentist is teaching him or her the way that he or she does it. Right. And so there's not a real broad opportunity to see things outside. I've heard of a lot of dental assistants who get outside of that and they get into a different practice who does things differently, and it's like they're starting over from day one almost. So I value education greatly, but I also say if you're going to get an education, make it a broad education. Make it to where it's something that could apply in any dental practice where you work, because Kirk, you and I both know that an assistant may not be in the same practice for 20 or 30 years. He or she may move around a little bit, and every dentist is different, just like every dental practice is different. So education's important, but just make sure you get that broad base for your education.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Any other thoughts you have as far as assisting in this role and adding some elements to the bottom line?
The only thing that I would say is just dentists, open up that line of communication to your assistant. We talked earlier about the interview, and testing them to see what they know about your practice. Sit down and talk to your assistants. You open that line of communication about why they love what they do. What's their best part of their day? What's the thing that is giving them some problems? Because I think that an assistant will see you asking, and that's a doorway to open things up for an even better relationship where there's some honest, open feedback and communication that can help both of you. So I am a big fan of communication. I'm a big fan of if something's wrong, let's get it fixed immediately. Don't let it bubble under the surface. Don't let it be like a splinter in your finger and just ignore it. Get it out. Talk about it. And so I think the more dentists and assistants can talk about their passions and their problems and how they can work better together, the better the business is going to be overall.
Amen, buddy. So this is a huge part. So if you're watching this, there's no question you have got to grow those people around you and give them the opportunity to function at a very high level. So now, Kevin, if people want to get a hold of you, how can I get a hold of you? And can you just tell us a little bit more about Ignite DA? Just How did that all came together and what is it?
Absolutely. And again, a huge shout out to Dr. David Rice at Ignite DDS. He and I started doing things back in September together. Ignite DA is really a community for assistants. We do webinars twice a month where we talk about things about empowerment, about everything from waterline safety to how to get that raise that seems so hard to get sometimes. Yeah. And it's igniteda.net. And I certainly encourage people to check things out on there. You can get a hold of me at kevin.henry@igniteda.net. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, point you in the right direction. Certainly look me up on Facebook. Happy to friends you, talk to you about things there. So, Kirk, I just appreciate you being interested in the subject. I mean, it's something I'm passionate about, and I'm glad to see more and more people are starting to really get the value of the assistant.
Amen, brother. Well, if they don't get it now, they'll come around to it. My hope is it's just earlier than later. So
me too. Me too.
Absolutely. So stick around for a second. I want to just chat with you for a little bit, but we'll say goodbye to everybody watching. So if you're watching this, do me a favor. If you enjoyed today, hit the share button. And then you're also going to want to check out Ignite DA. They just do great stuff over there all across the board. So give your team the opportunity to grow. So thank you so much for watching the Best Practices Show. Until we see you next time, keep watching and hope you guys have an awesome day. Thank you so much.